My Bigfoot encounter in the rainforest. The rain pelted against the canopy above, creating a symphony of droplets that echoed through the dense forest. My boots squelched in the mud as I trudged along the narrow path, cursing the weather. A typical West Coast snotty day, but even in the rain, the forest held a mystical allure. The thick fog clung to the trees, creating an otherworldly atmosphere that was both eerie and enchanting. I had come to these woods for a bit of solitude and a break from my hectic life. My goal was to spend a week in a small cabin I had rented, deep in the heart of the forest, far away from civilization. It was supposed to be a peaceful retreat, a chance to reconnect with nature. Little did I know that this trip would be anything but peaceful. The first couple of days were uneventful, spent mostly indoors due to the relentless rain. I occupied my time with reading, writing, and the occasional foray outside to gather firewood or stretch my legs. On the third day, the rain finally let up, and I decided to take advantage of the break in the weather to explore a bit further from the cabin. I packed a small backpack with essentials, water, a snack, my camera, and set off down a trail that led deeper into the forest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and pine, and the only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, but I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, the forest was full of wildlife, and it was natural to feel a bit uneasy in such an isolated place. About an hour into my hike, I came across a small clearing. The sun had finally broken through the clouds, casting dappled light onto the forest floor. I took a moment to rest, sitting on a fallen log and taking a sip of water. It was then that I noticed something odd. At the edge of the clearing, partially hidden behind a cluster of ferns, was a large, upright figure. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, perhaps a tree stump or a shadow. But as I stared, the figure moved. It was subtle, just a slight shift, but enough to send a jolt of adrenaline through my body. I froze, my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure was tall, much taller than any human, and covered in dark matted hair. It stood on two legs, its posture eerily similar to that of a man. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled for my camera. I wanted to capture this moment, to have proof of what I was seeing. But as I raised the camera to my eye, the figure seemed to sense my movement. It turned its head towards me, and I was struck by the intensity of its gaze. Its eyes were deep and dark, almost human, but with an intelligence that was unsettling. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I was too shocked to move, and the creature seemed equally curious about me. Then, with a grace that belied its size, it turned and vanished into the trees. I sat there for a few moments, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. Had I really seen what I thought I had seen? A part of me wanted to believe it was just a hallucination brought on by isolation and fatigue. But another part of me knew that what I had witnessed was real. I had seen Bigfoot. I quickly packed up my things and headed back to the cabin, my eyes darting around nervously. Every rustle of leaves, every crack of a twig sent my heart racing. When I finally reached the safety of the cabin, I locked the door and collapsed into a chair, my mind replaying the encounter over and over. I had encountered Bigfoot. That night, as I lay in bed, I could hear the sounds of the forest outside, the calls of owls, the rustling of branches, and then, in the distance, a low, guttural howl that sent shivers down my spine. I knew then that I wasn't alone in these woods. Bigfoot was out there watching, waiting. The rest of my stay was uneventful, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. On my last day, as I was packing up to leave, I found a small token on the porch of the cabin, a neatly stacked pile of rocks. It was a gesture that seemed almost human. A parting gift from Bigfoot? I'll never know for sure. As I drove away from the cabin, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of awe and fear. I had come to the forest seeking peace and solitude, but what I found was something far more profound. An encounter with Bigfoot, a glimpse into a world that few ever see. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that encounter stayed fresh in my mind. I found myself obsessively researching Bigfoot sightings and encounters, trying to find a logical explanation for what I had seen. The more I read, the more I realized that my experience was not unique. Thousands of people had reported similar sightings, describing creatures that matched Bigfoot down to the smallest detail. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to go through the photos I had taken during my trip. As I scrolled through the images on my camera, I stopped at a picture I had taken in the clearing, just moments before I saw Bigfoot. There, in the background, partially obscured by foliage, was a dark shape. My hands trembled as I zoomed in. It was blurry but unmistakable, the same figure I had seen. I had captured Bigfoot on camera. I shared the photo online, on forums dedicated to Bigfoot research. The response was overwhelming. Some people dismissed it as a hoax or a case of pareidolia, the tendency to see patterns where none exist. But others, including some experienced researchers, believed it was genuine evidence of a Bigfoot sighting. They encouraged me to share my story, to add my voice to the growing body of Bigfoot eyewitness accounts. Encouraged by their support, I decided to return to the forest. This time I brought better equipment, a high-resolution camera, a digital audio recorder, and a friend who was as fascinated by Bigfoot as I was. We planned to stay for a weekend, hoping to document any unusual activity related to Bigfoot. The first night was uneventful. We set up camp in the same clearing where I had seen Bigfoot, keeping a fire burning as we sat and listened to the sounds of the forest. The night was calm, and despite my anticipation, nothing out of the ordinary happened. The second night, however, was different. Around midnight, as we were sitting by the fire, we heard a series of knocks coming from the trees. They were rhythmic, almost deliberate, and unlike any natural sound we had heard before. We looked at each other, our excitement tinged with fear. My friend grabbed the audio recorder and started recording. The knocks continued, moving closer, then stopping abruptly. The forest fell silent, and we sat there holding our breath, waiting. Then, from the darkness, we heard a low, rumbling growl. It was deep and resonant, sending chills down my spine. I turned on my camera, scanning the trees with the night vision setting. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, in the distance, I saw a pair of eyes reflecting the infrared light. They were high off the ground, much too high to belong to any known animal in the area. The eyes blinked, then disappeared. We didn't sleep much that night. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig kept us on edge. By dawn, we were exhausted, but exhilarated. We had captured the sounds on the recorder and had seen something in the darkness. It wasn't definitive proof, but it was enough to convince us that Bigfoot was out there. Back home, we analyzed the recordings and the video footage. The audio revealed a series of knocks and the growl, clear and unmistakable. The video was less clear, but the glowing eyes were visible in the distance. We shared our findings online, sparking another wave of interest and debate about Bigfoot. I realized that my encounter with Bigfoot had changed me. I had gone from a skeptic to a believer, from someone seeking solitude to someone seeking answers. The forest, once a place of peace, had become a place of mystery and intrigue. And though I still didn't have all the answers, I knew one thing for certain. Bigfoot was out there, something that defied explanation, and I was determined to learn more. And so I continue my search, driven by curiosity and a sense of wonder. The forest calls to me, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. And each time I return, I carry with me the memory of that first encounter with Bigfoot, the moment I came face to face with the unknown. Please email your stories to us at camptownscary@mail.com. We can't wait to delve into your frightening adventures and share them with our community.